topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Welcome to Entrepreneurs Ascending, where we believe in a better life through better business. Here, we help you aspire to greatness, achieve your goals, and ascend to new heights. Whether you're starting, scaling, or exiting, we're here to empower you with inspiring stories, enlightening discussions, and transformative resources to help you accelerate your success. Now, it's time for Entrepreneurs Ascending. Welcome to Entrepreneurs Ascending, and of course, victory and successes are a big part of entrepreneurship. I mean, that's our goal. We have this dream that we're trying to reach, but as well, all of us have found along the way, defeat can be part of that as well. And defeat gives us a great opportunity. The ups and downs gives us great opportunities to learn. And they say that you never really truly fail if you allow yourself to learn from whatever happens. So we've got an awesome guest today, Steve Morris, who's been on some world-class yacht racing teams, and he's really just witnessed some amazing ups and downs, and really uses that to help kind of entrepreneurs and their teams and leadership be able to use all of that to constantly be winning, constantly be growing. He's a part of the entrepreneurial operating system with EOS, and so he's a certified implementer. And he uses all that background experience, leadership, team dynamics, to help smart entrepreneurs and their teams overcome challenges and reach their full potential. So, without further ado, we're going to go ahead and bring Steve on. So, come on with us, Steve.
Hi, Matt. Thank you very much for having me here. It's wonderful to be here today.
Oh, it's fantastic having you here today with us. So, now we've got to dig in a little bit more. I mean, we definitely want to get into some of those big lessons that you teach, but the background of the racing teams. How did you get into yacht racing? That's amazing.
Yeah, it goes all the way back to the beginning of my career, Matt. So I grew up in New Zealand. That's where this accent comes from. They say I come from down south, but it's a little further south than Alabama. We'll keep on going all the way down to the other side of the world. And so I grew up
where the
sailing.
hobbits are, right? I'm sorry, that's where hobbits live, right?
Exactly, yes.
Yeah, okay.
It's the Middle Earth. Lovely green grass and incredible mountains and everything like that. It's wonderful scenery in New Zealand. But it is an island, right, in the middle of the South Pacific. And so being on the water and sailing is a big part of our culture there. And so I grew up on the water, grew up sailing. And then my first job right out of college, I'd studied engineering in college. My first job was actually working on a professional sailing team. So I went from studying engineering mechanics and all thermodynamics and all that stuff to being in the gym at 6 o'clock in the morning and, lifting weights up off the floor so I could get strong enough to go out and be part of this team to sail this boat. And I was helping a team get ready to go race around the world. And that was way back in the late 1980s.
Wow. So how did you transition into, so the you were engineering, right? You said, and then you found yourself getting up in the gym at 6 a.m. and getting ready to prepare for this yacht. I mean, that seems like kind of a big jump. Like, did somebody just come to you and say, hey, you know what? You might be actually pretty good at the actual racing part, or how did that happen?
Well, the connection came through the university, the college that I was at. And that's kind of like you can keep on going for a way back story. But the thing was, there's this thing called the America's Cup, which is the oldest sporting trophy that's still being competed. It started way back in the 1850s. And the United States had held on to the America's Cup for over 100 years. Until finally in 1983 in Newport, Rhode Island, a team from Australia was able to come and win the America's Cup and took it down under, down to Australia. And then from there, New Zealand started getting involved in challenging for the America's Cup. And that started a whole industry around researching and figuring out how to build stronger and faster boats. And I was very lucky to be studying that at university. And then from that, this racing team that I eventually ended up on, they were looking for somebody very technical to come in and help with the performance of the boat. And so my sailing background, the knowledge that I'd done from researching in sailing boats, and combined with my engineering degree, kind of all came together at the same point. And I got a job, working on this boat. And we spent a couple of years building it and getting it ready to go and race around the world.
Okay, so you had the engineering, the technical background, but you had already been kind of gearing it towards, this industry, and now taking that into the success mindset of being on a highly competitive team like that. So have you always been kind of like into the very competitive sports like that, or did something just kind of click where it's just like, this sounds like fun?
Yeah, it was pretty much that, I think. I'd always sort of been active and fit. I mean, that's part of sort of the lifestyle in New Zealand is based around outdoors. And so to have this opportunity come to me and was just absolutely amazing. And the more I sort of got into it, the more I loved it. And I found out a lot about, myself, and coming into being part of this high profile sailing team. I was talking about getting up in the gym at 6 o'clock in the morning, and we had this trainer who had been a Commonwealth weightlifter. He was all of about sort of 5 feet tall and about 5 feet wide. I mean, he was just built to be able to lift a lot of weight up off the floor. And he had put us through these workouts that really, pushed strength and cardiovascular fitness. But I found something in myself of the drive to be able to come in and be a part of that. And when we had to go do a whole bunch of push-ups, I'd get to the front of the line and get my push-ups done and all of those sorts of things. But overall, it was sort of being part of this team and like seeing this team come together and really what it felt like to be part of a really amazing team heading for an awesome goal.
Mm-hmm. So, and as part of this team, now, what was it like getting into that high performance state? Like, how did that come together for you? Did you guys naturally kind of just mesh, or did it take quite a bit of work? Did it take, was there that storming, forming, norming, and performing process for that? I'm curious how it would work, and because I mean, everybody's got to do their part, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I didn't have all of those words back then. Right, I was just part of the team. But what I experienced, I see now, right, with the benefit of the frameworks that we use in our work and hindsight. Yeah, we went through all of that. Bringing together a group of people at the beginning who have never kind of worked together and done something like this before. We've had to find out, the hard way, who are the good people on the team and who just didn't fit and mesh with, the team culture. And that's a lot of what I do now with my clients is, going all the way back to how it felt on that team, as we were bringing it together and sort of really seeing how the culture of the team established itself and who made it. And then there were just people who didn't want to be a part of that. They just went up for doing the training, going to the gym, going out all day sailing, doing the maintenance on the boat and the repair and the improvements. Some people didn't want to be a part of that, and so either exited or self-selected out of the team, and then other people would join. And then the same thing happened to myself within that team. So because of my position in the team initially, I was working on a lot of real technical information about the performance of the boat. I was also a navigator, right? So spent a lot of time figuring out and working with the team on the boat about how we should be sailing in a certain way and improving the boat's performance. And at one stage, I was going to be the navigator to navigate this boat all the way around the world as a race. So that was an amazing thing for me. I was all of 22 years old, but then this thing happened, and what it was we were going to sail from New Zealand to Australia, and sailed up the coast of New Zealand, and being this little island in between the Tasman Sea and the Pacific Ocean, at the top of New Zealand, these two oceans meet, and it's really rough there. And so I was down below in the boat, staring at the charts and plotting our course across to Australia, and going through this rough patch. I started not feeling so good, and so turns out I got seasick, right, and pretty badly seasick, and it really incapacitated me for probably about 24 to 36 hours. I was out, and so. We talk in EOS in the work that I do about when a person's in the right position, they GWC their role, which means they get it, they want it, they have the capacity to do it. And boy, oh boy, I got that role. I'd been sailing all my life. I really understood how to navigate boats. I wanted it. I really, wanted to be able to navigate this boat around the world. But capacity, if I was going to get seasick, I did not have the capacity to do that job. And this is a high-performing sailing team. They couldn't afford to have somebody in a critical position as the navigator's position who was going to get seasick. That just wasn't going to work. So I ended up myself, not being part of the team that ultimately sailed around the world.
Wow. Yeah. That had to have been a really, really tough decision for you to make. I mean, the thrill of the race and being able to be part of this opportunity. So how did you take that moment and use that to move on to your next step?
Yeah, well, certainly it was a difficult time to sort of come to terms with that. But at the same time, I had been I'd been pretty sick for a while, so it was kind of like, yeah, this is not going to be the life for me. So I was fortunate after that to be able to meet the boat's designer, who was actually another New Zealander based up in Annapolis, Maryland. And so I was able to, once my contract with the actual boat was finished, I was able to get a job and come and actually start designing sailboats. So to go from the sailing side of it to now being at the drawing board and doing all of the engineering and design work that went into these high profile teams and boats.
So you're able to use some of your past experiences to be able to kind of navigate, no pun intended, well, maybe a little bit, but navigate into a role that you had more capacity for. Now, did you find that to be a disappointing move, or were you able to find kind of a victory in that moment of being able to find something that really seemed like a better fit?
Yeah, definitely, the disappointment, right? And now I'm sort of, as I look back and I'm talking about, over 30 years ago, it's sort of like, what would life have been like, if I hadn't made it through and, taken that course. But, the course that I ended up taking and coming designing sailboats was incredible. I got to, as a designer of boats, then we were working with a lot of different teams. And so this really sort of has now, come to inform the work that I do, because I got to work on some amazing teams, multiple teams that, were able to win round the world yacht races, these, grueling 6-9 month races. I got to be a part of, designing and working with those teams. And then I also was on some pretty high profile teams that didn't make it. right? Despite having all of the resources that we needed. And so I really got to kind of feel and experience in a very tangible way what that was like, to the feeling of being on an awesome team where everybody's got each other's backs, and the feeling of what it's like when the team's just not coming together, and it's
Well, yeah, I can imagine being a strategic growth coach, scaling up coach. Myself, I think I kind of maybe empathize a little bit with you in that sometimes when we walk into a new customer, sometimes or a new client, sometimes they've been doing really well. They're riding high on some great victories, and they want somebody to come in and help them put some more focus to that and just kind of put the pedal to the metal, if you will. But a lot of times we walk in and people are maybe kind of struggling. Things aren't the team isn't quite gelling the way that they hoped it would. So tell me a little bit about how you, yeah, like that first step that you take with a team to figure out like what is it that they're struggling with, and how that kind of relates back to some of your past your racing experiences and gelling and with these teams.
yeah. So it's it's always interesting to come and meet a team at the beginning for the first time, right? And to sort of start listening to the voices around the room, and seeing how people are showing up on the leadership team. And in particular, I think, it really starts sort of surfacing what's going on with the team when they're starting to, discuss and debate, maybe some thorny, difficult issues.
Mm,
And so this is when you really start seeing as a coach, right? I mean, like, what's the kind of the tenor of the conversation going on here? And, a lot of the work that we do is, really based around this foundation of trust, right? I mean, this is from Patrick Lencioni and the five dysfunctions of a team. That was a model I'd wished I'd had 30 years ago, right? Because this is what I experienced, and see what I see now with teams that I work with is that we've got to have that foundation of vulnerability-based trust. And I think, if I look back into my sort of sailing days, I mean, that's an interesting concept to sort of land on the table, because, frankly, you've got a bunch of burly, muscly guys in this very sort of masculine environment. I mean, this word vulnerability just
right, right.
doesn't really kind of fly too much, but the trust certainly is there. And even though, we wouldn't label it as vulnerability-based trust, it needed to be there, right? That this idea of somebody could say, could trust enough in their position in the team that they could say, hey, like, I'm missing something here, or I need help. And somebody's got their back, right? And to be able to really lean into that. And I think, when we've got that foundation of that trust, then, the next part of Lencioni's model is to be able to have, healthy conflict, passionate debate about what's going on. And that's, really where I sort of see, do teams have this or not, right? Are they able to really come in and get into it on an issue and then come to a resolution on it and walk out as friends? Or, do these arguments end up derailing them? And they don't end up, with a sort of an amicable resolution to what they want to do. And I saw that, I think I experienced that on these sailing teams. I didn't have those words or the framework to understand it then, but I certainly see it now in the teams, that I'm working with.
So when you first get into a group, everybody's just kind of trying to play their part, just kind of like in a team. But it's you experienced when you were out racing or when you were preparing for races, practicing, putting yourselves under some pressure. I'm guessing then putting yourselves under some pressure to experience the conflict, maybe in a little bit more of a controlled scenario than when you have to be out there racing. I mean, is that kind of similar as to when you bring a team together and you start kind of pushing a little bit into where you kind of sense some of the conflict and some of the tension is in kind of that controlled environment where you're there to maybe help them work their way through it. I was going to say navigate again. I didn't want to. I mean, too many uses of the same word in the pun. But to help them. Do you kind of do that in a controlled environment with the teams that you work with to help them to work through it with a experienced person such as yourself?
Yeah, I think it's definitely, I mean, what I do as a coach is to just be able to sort of shine a light on how they're interacting together.
Yeah.
Right. And so, and I think things, if I look back, I think things have changed in business over the last, few decades. I think way back when there used to be much more of the sort of command and control way of, this is how we're doing things, right? There's somebody at the top and they're laying down, the law about how things are going to happen. And on sailing teams, I used to experience this. Sometimes, we'd end up with a skipper who was just, yelling. There's a lot of yelling going on. There's a lot of sort of, what Lencioni calls mean-spirited personal attacks.
Manipulative, trying to get somebody to comply just by manipulating them, right?
Yeah, but not in a good way, and those teams, people are shut down, right? And it's the same thing happens in business. I was working with a group, a few years ago where there was just, really no discussion going on in the room about what the team needed to do. It was just, yeah, we're good. Yeah, everything's fine. Don't have any issues. They weren't meeting their goals, so obviously something was going on. And, what I eventually discovered was that there just wasn't an environment within that team that allowed people to be able to speak and to be able to speak their mind and to be able to do it safely, without getting shut down. And so being able to sort of notice that, as a coach, to be able to shine a light on that and say, look, here's what I'm seeing about your interactions. And then it's kind of up to the team to decide, do they have the vulnerability and openness to do something about it?
So when you walk into that first day, with the client, and you find out that they've got these tensions and they're not able to handle the conflict, how do you start the conversation about vulnerability, right? Like, because in the American culture, it's not one of those things that people really love to talk about. I guess maybe maybe a TikTok or whatever, but in the boardroom, it's a different conversation. So how do you start to unpack that with them?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there's I unpack it, I think, through sort of several ways, sort of depending on the team. And so, for example, I will at least sort of introducing the subject, right? That sort of says, okay, we've got something here. This is how a model for how we build a highly functional, trusting team, right? So I can paint a picture, and within each one of those sort of stages within Lencioni's model, there's kind of, this is what a dysfunctional team looks like, and this is what a functional, team looks like. So I can start asking them, like, where do you guys think you lie, on this scale here? And I think, what I've seen is that can be a really interesting way to kind of crack this thing open and start talking about it, because particularly if I get everybody to write down on a scale of 1 to 10, where do you guys think you are between dysfunction and highly functional and trusting? And get people to write that down. And then we go around the room and hear what people wrote. And then this is when we start suddenly, somebody will put I think we're a 4 out of 10 on the table. Oh, 4 out of 10. Okay, got it. And go around the next person. Well, that's 6 out of 10, or somebody else might be 8 out of 10. Okay, so we got 4 out of 10 on this side. We got 8 out of 10 on this side. So let's talk about that. What are you seeing? Like, why did you rate it a 4? What are you seeing? Why do you rate it an 8? And I think that really starts getting a team talking. But then what I'm sort of sensitive to and what I'm watching in the room is if this conversation starts, going well, right? And people are sort of talking, I'm also watching to see, is there somebody who sort of starts coming to maybe shut down the conversation in a way. And so I'm trying to sort of really understand what those dynamics are. Maybe there isn't. Maybe they've just never sat down and addressed this as a team before, right? So this is all new territory. And amazing things come up. I have had a team sort of processing through, and one of the things was somebody said, well, I'm not giving it a high rating because look, last week I sent out a whole bunch of emails. I needed the help from you guys, and I didn't get any response.
Wow.
Boom, put that out there on the table, right?
Yeah.
And so people start, in this environment that, like you and I, facilitate with the teams. It's like we're just here to like get better, right? We're not here to point blame, all of those things. We're here to figure out in the spirit of the greater good of growing this business, how can we get better, right? And so let's start talking about that.
So you kind of set that place on the map where you want to go, and you kind of zero in where they're at right now. But that takes the different perspectives of the different team members, as you're saying, is because some people might think everything's okay, but other people might be like, no, there's really an issue here. Every time I try to do something or try to bring up some ideas or innovate, I'm shut down by, the guardians of the old ways,
Exactly.
So, wow. Okay. And I'm just curious, did it work that same way on some of those first yacht racing teams? Did you guys have that nice discussion, or were there a few more fists thrown ever? I'm just curious.
Yeah, well, this is what I say. I wish I'd had known about this framework, because I don't think, things were just happening, right? And I was experiencing them without being able to sort of put them in this context. And I think, some teams were just sort of, maybe they just happened in that way, or just, through the good luck of a great leader, we're just able to create that environment. Somebody knew something about how to create an amazing environment for the team to thrive in. But other teams I worked on, it's just there was none of that insight, and really trying to figure out, like, why were people there? Oftentimes, a lot of the work that I do now is we're trying to get the politics out of the room, right? We're just trying to get open and honest, and let's have a clear and direct discussion about what's going on within the team. Get rid of the politics. But I've experienced working on some teams where it turns out that there was some politics going on, right? We just didn't know quite how the decision making was getting made, or the decision making was going through, other conversations. So those environments, it's very hard for people to really engage with their full selves and want to come in and be open and honest about helping. And I think the difference I sort of see is in the teams that got it and brought it together and had the trust, it freed up their energy. It freed up their ability to be able to literally kind of look up and out of the boat, and to be bringing in information, like to be more strategic, bringing stuff back to the whole team, being able to scan the horizon, see what the competition's doing, bring that information in. Whereas teams that weren't making it, we're just all bickering, is this your rope? No, it's your rope. I'm not going to help you pull the sail, all that sort of stuff. Well, they didn't have any time to be able to look up and out of the boat and be more strategic, right? So it really is about being able to free up energy to really help the entire team move forward.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so it's kind of like if you're too busy watching your back because you're not sure if somebody else, on your team is going to stab you in the back, or if you're too busy watching other people to make sure that they're doing their job, how do you ever focus on where you need to go and what your role is? So everybody who's too busy paying attention to everybody else, their own work is kind of just is fallen to the wayside.
Yeah, yeah. When you're just not, I think when a team comes together and everybody does have each other's backs, it's almost, this is where the magic starts happening, right? The team is really lining up around, this is where we need to get to. Everybody's able to make decisions, to take the team forward without always constantly having to come back to check in with the boss. Hey boss, are we allowed to do this, or should we do that? It's everybody's getting more aligned, and that just becomes a high leverage effect in my view.
Yeah. Now, I think an interesting component of this is, how does this trust come together or fall apart after a defeat or a setback?
Yeah, I think those are the testing times,
Yeah.
right? And so, I've experienced all sorts of different things in that situation, but I think the good times is when a defeat can be used as the foundation or the stepping stone of being able to move on and do better next time. And I think in those cases, it's not finding fault with an individual or pointing the finger of blame, right? Because I think when that starts happening, that's when the team starts falling apart. The acrimonious discussion or debate, arguments start up, then we're not together as a team in that case.
Yeah, because I've found that if it's those times where you really see if people are actually trust that everybody else was trying to do their best. And if they don't, it's very clear when it's like, well, you didn't do this and
Yeah.
you didn't do that, or yeah, I couldn't do this because that other person didn't do this. I mean, you see very clearly. I mean, sure, somebody might be trying to kind of cover their own backs or whatever, but they can't trust in the ability to have that vulnerability in that team, right? Because otherwise, then they'd be like, yeah, you know what, I did make a mistake. But a lot of these company cultures, like, it feels like if you make a mistake, I'm sorry, you're out. We're gonna fire you. So how do you
Mhm.
create a safe place to say, you know what, failures happen, but we're going to actually value the lessons learned from that, and we're going to all move forward together, as opposed to just casting you, throwing you, off the bow, and maybe letting you throwing out a lifesaver for you or whatever.
Yes, walk the plank. Yeah.
Yeah, walk the plank. There we go. That's a better one. Make you walk the plank.
Yeah. Well, I think in my experience, it comes down to the leader, right? This is the ultimate responsibility of the leader to be able to just really lay down, this is how we are going to process through what's just happened. And there's a really interesting story I read about Pete Carroll, right, the coach of the Seattle Seahawks, going for their second Super Bowl win, and it's playing New England Patriots, and they were just about to win the game, and the pass got intercepted, and they weren't able to win their second Super Bowl in a row. And I'm not getting all of the details about this story correct, but I do sort of, the thing that really kind of stood out to me is Pete Carroll, being the coach, and the leader of that team, sort of described that moment of just sort of seeing the interception, and knowing right then, in that split second, okay, it's over, right? And then, but he had to just put that aside, right? Because what he needed to do was then to come in and to just help the rest of the team process what had just happened, and I really just loved reading that story and his sort of analysis of, just what was going through and his mindset in that situation of just whatever his personal feelings, he was going to deal with those later. But in that moment, right then, with defeat being snatched from the jaws of victory, as they say, his role was to create that container for his team, the whole Seahawks organization, and to help them process through that in a productive way. So it's down to the leader, in my view.
I think that's a powerful insight. A lot of organizations, well, pretty much every organization really rises and falls from the leadership, and to have the kind of leader that can say, "Hey, we're gonna try to put some of our emotions aside here, so we can really take a look at what really happened, without just pointing fingers and trying to blame everybody else, because we're never going to get to the source of truth and be able to fix it and move forward." So that's powerful. Well, I know we've gone a little bit over time today, but I'm curious, if somebody wanted to get to know you a little bit more, or find out more information about you, or reach out to you, what would be a great way for them to do that?
Yeah, thanks, Matt. I really enjoyed this discussion with you.
Yeah,
I think it's always good to talk with a sort of fellow kindred spirit about the sort of work that we do with our clients in work. So the best way to reach out to me is probably just by email. So steve.morris@eosworldwide.com is the best way to find me. I'm also under the EOS Worldwide website at Stephen-Morris, so people can find me there. And of course on LinkedIn, Stephen A. Morris.
Of course, you can't be without a LinkedIn profile these days.
Can't be without LinkedIn, no.
So, well, hey, Steve, I really appreciate your time on here too. Maybe we can do it again sometime. I'm sure that there's probably some amazing more stories that you can share in the future as well. But man, keep going out there and doing the great work. There's so many organizations out there that they have fantastic dreams, right? And we have a tendency to get in our own ways, and folks like you and me, it's an honor to be able to get in there and help them to work through those things, help those teams break through those walls, and be able to achieve those amazing victories. So, well, thanks again, and thank you everybody who's watched or listened to this episode. We always appreciate your support. Please, tell your friends and fellow entrepreneurs, or people who want to be an entrepreneur, or maybe people who have some amazing stories that would be a great guest on this show with us here. So until we meet again, keep I don't really have a very good tagline right now. Keep ascending. I gotta work on that.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks. Thank you for being with us today. But now is the time to put what we talked about into practice. Remember, your family, employees, and community are depending on you to rise up and win. The great news is you're not alone. You're part of a resurgence of entrepreneurs who are ready to take their business, life, and impact to the next level, and we're going to do it together. This show is powered by Time for Success, where we help business owners every day who want more freedom and wealth while building a legacy of positive impact. Please follow Time for Success on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube for more helpful strategies and tools for creating the business and life of your dreams.